A Facebook whistleblower has accused the social network of putting profits ahead of users' well-being. Former product manager Frances Haugen gave her first public comments to CBS's 60 Minutes on Sunday night. Haugen says she passed thousands of internal documents to U.S. lawmakers and the Wall Street Journal because of the harms Facebook poses. Take a listen.
And one of the consequences of how Facebook is picking out that content today is that it is optimizing for content that gets engagement or reaction. But its own research is showing that content that is hateful, that is divisive, that is polarizing, it's easier to inspire people to anger than it is to other emotions.
Misinformation, angry content is enticing to people and keeps them on the platform.
Yes. Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, they'll click on less ads, they'll make less money.
And here with us now is Bloomberg News' social media reporter, Naomi Nix, who is in D.C. for us. So, Naomi, we just watched a portion of that report. Talk to us about whether we learned anything new from this information shared by Frances Haugen.
Well, we definitely learned why she decided to come forward. She said she had been, she was a product manager at Facebook who was in charge of misinformation, and she had just seen repeated instances of the company deciding to make a decision that essentially put the profits over the well-being of its users. She said, she secretly copied thousands of pages for about a month and handed them over to authorities. And she said, she didn't think that oversight or action or change would come from the company within. She said it was going to have to take outside oversight for the company to change.
Naomi, what really stuck out to you as somebody who covers this industry very closely? You've covered Facebook and Instagram really closely. What stuck out to you based on what she said?
Well, one of the findings that came out was around hate speech. So one of the reports that she uncovered showed that the company actually knows that it takes far less action, or it takes action against far less hate speech and violent content than it lets on. Facebook has repeatedly said that it essentially takes action. It finds most of the problematic content in that area before it's reported by users as a way to show that they're working on it. But it turns out that there's probably more of that on the platform than we know about. She talked about the actions it took after the election. She said, look, they put in some safeguards to protect the U.S. elections, and then they started to roll some of that back. Again, as sort of evidence that the company is putting its profit motives above protecting the country. And she kind of really honed in on this overall point, which is that the more we engage on the platform, everyday users, the more the more time we spend, the more money Facebook makes. And part of the problem, part of what gets us to stay on the site, what gets everyday people to stay on the site, is content that is polarizing, is content that incites anger. And that's not necessarily the kind of content that is most productive for our democracy.
Right. And we heard from the report Facebook's comment to it. They called it misleading. They also said that the company seeks to balance free expression with the need to keep the platform safe. Do you think this is actually finally going to lead to some sort of change or regulation of Facebook? Or do you see the next few days people potentially just continuing to use Facebook and forgetting about this information?
Well, that's a good point, right? So while this has been very damaging to Facebook's reputation, I think the jury is still out whether this will actually affect users' willingness to use the platform. The company has weathered several political crises in the past, and it continues to make more and more money, especially now that we're still in a pandemic and people are keeping home. The question is, will there be regulation in Washington? And this has ignited a bit of a firestorm in Washington. So she is set to appear before Congress tomorrow to talk about some of her discoveries. Additionally, we've had lawmakers who are in particular vowing to regulate. They're particularly concerned about some of the findings around the effect that Instagram has on the mental health of young users, particularly teen girls. and some evidence that the Facebook probably wasn't as upfront about what it knew about its own internal research on that topic. And so that's where we're actually seeing some bipartisan activity, where Republicans and Democrats are sharing that concern. Whether they'll be able to come together to pass a law, I think is still an open question, and whether that law will actually address the problems that the company has in a way that's substantive is also an open question.
Right. I mean, what is it going to take to actually get some sort of action? I mean, what is the roadblock that is preventing Congress from coming together and pass some sort of regulation? I mean, there's been damaging report after damaging report, but like you were saying, the jury's still out on whether anything actually gets done.
Yeah, I mean, I think these things are tricky to regulate, right? So part of the problem, particularly on the Instagram issue, is, there's some researchers who are saying, look, it would be better if Facebook showed young teen girls less information about dieting fads, about, celebrity-oriented content that might make particularly vulnerable young users feel less bad and depressed about their own lives and their own level of attractiveness. That's like a hard thing to pass a law, right? Because at the end of the day, these companies have free speech, and they have a legal shield known as Section 230, which protects them from lawsuits over content that's been posted by users. And so, the company, Congress could roll some of those protections back, but if they roll them back for Facebook, they're likely also rolling them back, for lots of other smaller tech companies that don't have these problems. And so it's actually kind of difficult to pass a law that addresses quite these issues. The other, I think the area where Facebook might be even more vulnerable is with state AGs. And the Federal Trade Commission obviously still has its case against Facebook, alleging that it's being anti-competitive. So those are some areas we might also look to.
And finally, Naomi, I mean, just looking ahead to, as you mentioned, Frances is going to be testifying on Capitol Hill this week. She said she has thousands of documents that she took from the company. What are some of the unanswered questions that you still have and that you still want to know and we could potentially get this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very interested to see what does she know about how the company acted around the January 6th Capitol riots. What did Facebook know about what was going on ahead of those events? Were there any missed opportunities to stop some of the organizing that was happening on Facebook? That's one area. I think more details around the hate speech topic. What does the company know about how, say, white supremacy groups organize on its platform? And has it missed some opportunities there to address those issues? And I think research on, kind of what kind of research or what does it know about how its competitors' content behave on its platform? We've seen the company be in a bit of a political battle with Apple. And so curious kind of, are some of the ways it's been acting in the marketplace? Does it know a little bit more about those issues?
Lots of unanswered questions. Naomi, thank you so much for starting us off this morning. That is Naomi Nix in Washington, our social media reporter.